NFL Draft Week. Here we go. We're just a few days away. Welcome to the show. It is Fantasy Football Today, Monday, April 21st. Hope everybody had a very happy Easter, very happy holiday. And if your kids were on spring break, hopefully they didn't drive you crazy in the house all day. And we've got a special guest to talk about mock drafts and rankings and all that. It is CBS Sports senior NFL draft analyst, host of the With the First Pick podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, Wilson Ryans joining the show today. Wilson, welcome.
Hey, Adam, thank you. Good to see you guys, Jamie and Dave, of course. I'll just say this quickly. My kids are on spring break here up in New York as well. My 13-year-old came down with a curious cough yesterday around 6 p.m. I said, you're going to school. So just go ahead and wrap that up. But anyway, yeah, I'm happy to be here to talk to you guys about the NFL draft.
That is Ryan Wilson, of course. Follow him at Ryan Wilson CBS. He's got so many mock drafts. How many more are you publishing between now and Thursday?
So Monday, as we do this, one just came out this morning. What I would do if I were sealing the Pete Prisco, if I were the GM for all 32 teams, and then Thursday morning, the day of the draft, the final mock draft will come out where I've overthought everything and trying to get every pick right. And usually it's one of the worst ones, if we're being honest.
Jamie and Dave are here as well. Jamie and Dave, I ordered an Easter cake because we hosted a Easter thing yesterday. And when I submitted the online form, I asked them to put Happy Easter on the cake in writing. And they must have thought I was some idiot who had a typo, and they wrote Happy Easter. Should I have asked for a refund? What do you think?
Should you have or did you?
Yeah, both.
You shouldn't have, and you definitely did.
And you did.
No, I did not. Probably could have just altered.
Was it in the shape of a lamb? No, I'm serious. I learned, I'm Jewish. I don't know all this stuff, but I learned that on Easter, it's traditional to serve a cake in the shape of a lamb.
No, it was the shape of a circle. If the lambs are circle shapes, then yes, it was a lamb.
Hey, not to get too far down this road, Adam, are you Catholic?
No, my wife is.
My wife is too. I'm not Catholic either. Dave, as an indication of how good of a Gentile I am, I don't even know when Easter is because it changes every year. Like my wife just tells me 2 days before, and I just know where I'm supposed to go.
Same thing with me and the Jewish holidays. I don't have a clue.
One day I show up
in the
Easter.
Ryan was matzo all over my house.
I thought Ryan would just bake a cake. I mean, he's good with the
there it is. There it is. That's a blast from the past. If you've only been watching the show for 15 minutes with Wilson Ryan.
Yeah, there you go. All right, so Ryan, you had previous mock drafts with Shedeur Sanders going second. In this, what I would do, you have the Browns taking Travis Hunter, and you have Sanders going to the Steelers at 21. Yes.
Yeah.
So where do you think Sanders actually ends up?
I think the real landing spot's going to start that conversation at 9 with the New Orleans Saints. But the issue with New Orleans is I've heard they like Shedeur, but they're not red hot on Shedeur like the Titans will be on Cam Ward. The other issue is Trevor Penning, the offensive tackle, has not been very good. Their former first-round pick. Ryan Ramczyk just retired. So they could very easily focus on offensive line there at number 9. And then if Shedeur gets past number 9, it sort of feels like an Aaron Rodgers situation back in the day in 2005. Between 10 and 20, there's not a team that desperately needs a quarterback or even sort of needs a quarterback, really. So unless someone trades up and leapfrogs the Steelers, and the Browns could potentially do that from the top of the second round or maybe the Giants. I think Shedeur falls to 21, and it feels like the Steelers will take him there. And as a Steelers fan, I feel much better about Shedeur at 21 than I did about Kenny Pickett at 20 back in the 2022 draft. I was never a big Kenny Pickett guy. Part of me and our buddy Bryant McFadden at the time, we were at the draft together. We both thought that Malik Willis might be the guy for the Steelers there. So either way, the Steelers have moved on from Kenny Pickett. They don't have a quarterback to speak of here. We'll see what happens with Aaron Rodgers. Even if Aaron Rodgers signs, it feels like 21 is perhaps the farthest Shedeur will fall. And I say that with the understanding that our buddy Jonathan Jones released his one and only mock draft hours ago. And he's an insider, so he's not a mock draft guy. But a year ago, he was the only one on planet Earth, I believe, who had Michael Penix Jr. going to the Falcons. He had Shedeur falling out of the first round altogether. So that's the only thing that gives me pause.
Wow.
How many quarterbacks did he have in his mock? How many do you have in your mock?
He had one, Dave, and I have two. I think Jackson Dart, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, I think he's a souped up version of Kenny Pickett. And by that I mean a second round pick. Teams love that I've talked to, they're really high on Tyler Shuck, like top 50, the Louisville quarterback. I've never seen it. He's literally going to be 26, I think, when the fall rolls around. He's played for 3 different schools. He's had injury history. He's big. He's got a big arm. He's pretty athletic, but I don't see him as a top 50 guy. But look, man, I've been wrong before. So those 4 quarterbacks seem to be in the mix. And then the Jalen Milroe conversation probably in round 2, which team drafts them and how they're going to best use them. the league.
All right, sorry. I have one more question for Ryan. Then I'm going to let Dave and Jamie steer things in whatever direction they want to go. And I just want to preview what's coming up today. So I'm going to ask him for his top 5 quarterbacks, top 5 running backs, wide receivers, tight ends. I want to learn a little bit more about the offensive lineman. We haven't talked about that on fantasy football today. I want to know who he's higher on than consensus. And of course, this is a fantasy football show. We want to know who's going to make an impact in year 1 or down the line. So we'll get all of that. I also want to tell people about our NFL draft contest. If you want a spot in the podcast league, you can submit your predictions for the top 10 picks. It doesn't matter the team. You just have to tell us the players in order. And the URL is tinyurl.com/FFT2025 draft. tinyurl.com/FFT2025 draft. You can go to the Fantasy Football Today account on Twitter, and you'll see a link for it there. I'll tweet a link to it, but that's a form that you're going to fill out. You have to spell the names correctly. That's very important. And there's only one entry per person, so you got to make it count. My advice to you is to wait a little bit. Wait until Wednesday. Wait until Thursday. But get those in. Again, it's tinyurl.com/FFT2025 draft. Most correct answers is in the podcast league. We do have a very funny tiebreaker question. Thomas Schaefer did a great job with this. Thank you, Thomas, for putting this together. And he's going to take his time to sort through all the answers and make sure we have everything. We have everything right, and someone's going to win. And the link is going to be in the audio description and the YouTube description. Okay, sorry. Next question for me, Ryan. Is there any doubt that Tennessee takes Cam Ward? I know he's probably going to go number 1. Is there any chance we see a trade? Do you think? Like, what are the chances? And that's the only question. And yeah, tell me how good you think Cam Ward is. Give me an idea of Cam Ward, where he's going, and what you think of him. Because you said Cam Ward had the best pro day that you've ever been to, which I thought was really cool. So go ahead.
Yeah, Pete Prisco made fun of me for that one because I love everyone. As Jamie has also made fun of me for that as well. The other thing Jamie
he literally just texted me that, by the way. I said, Ryan's on with us right now. He goes, happiest draft guy in the world. He loves everyone.
One of the things Jamie used to do to me in person when we would be at the combine together, I had this tick where I would refer to every player we were talking to on set by their full name. So Joe Burrow, tell me why Joe Burrow is so good at being Joe Burrow type stuff. And Jamie, of course, made me self-conscious about it. So I couldn't even get through a question without Jamie smirking. And
that's not the best one I ever did to you, though.
Yeah. I'm sure this is an annual story. So I'll tell this every year because I'm old enough to forget stories. Yeah, so we're sitting on set with that year, Kenneth Walker III and what's his name?
Breece Hall.
Yeah, Breece Hall. Thank you. We're running backs 1 and 2, and they were very close for me. And Breece Hall was sitting on set with us, and me and Jamie. It may have been me, and then Breece, and then Jamie in terms of where we were on set. And dumbass Jamie looks over with a smirk on his face and points at me and goes, "Hey, Breece, this guy has you running back too." Breece turns to his left, and he looks like he's just seen someone run over his dog, and he's caught up with the person. He's about to pull them out of the car and beat the life out of him. He goes, "Okay, I'm top 2, and I'm not 2." And then he just looked straight ahead, and it was the most uncomfortable conversation ever. And Jamie's looking like he looks now, just giggling like an a-hole.
No, that's good content, Ryan.
I have a follow-up question for that story. When you interviewed Kenneth Walker III, did you say, "So Kenneth Walker III"?
Yes.
I'm sure I did. He preferred to be called Ken, so I probably called him Ken Walker III. But to answer your question, Adam Azer.
Yes.
There's like a less than 1% chance I feel like the Titans get off this pick. They need a quarterback. Brian Callahan came in after Will Levis was drafted, so that's not his guy. We saw the frustration on the sidelines just watching television, how angered he was at times with the way Will Levis was playing. And in terms of Cam Ward, I've gone back and forth on this after that pro day, and I do sort of glow up these kids. I really have a good time watching them, and I want them all to have success. And as Dave knows, as someone, when you have teenagers and your kids get older, you sort of feel like they're in the same age range, so you get that. But after some long, hard conversations with myself, if he were in last year's class, Cam Ward, he would be QB3 for me. Like, I didn't love Drake May last year. Drake May's final season at UNC was up and down, in part because he was young and all that other stuff. Their team wasn't very good. He played awesome last year for the Patriots, but it would have been Kaleb and then Jayden and then probably Cam Ward because he's 6'2.5". He's a really good athlete. He's got like just a hair below like Anthony Richardson, Will Levis arm strength in person. I was sort of surprised by that. and he's incredibly mobile. Just got to cut down on the hero plays that we saw from Kaleb and Jayden sort of when they were coming out of college. And the sooner he does that, the quicker it'll be more like Jayden and less like Kaleb early on in his rookie season. But I think you have to take him if you're Tennessee, and you can't trade out of that pick.
All right, Jamie, I'm going to throw it over to you. Ask something. And so someone says, we need a pic of Jamie stirring a pot for gift material. And I completely agree with that. Yes. What do you got, Jamie? What's on your mind?
I mean, I guess if we're going Cam Ward at 1, Travis Hunter seems like he's pegged for the Browns at number 2. So from what you've seen, heard, your thoughts, is he going to play both? Is he going to be primary wide receiver, primary cornerback? Where do you think he's better suited on the next level?
And I'm curious what you guys think about this from a fantasy perspective. So the whole contingent of Cleveland was out there at the Colorado Pro Days with the owner on down. And they had made it clear. They didn't hide it. They thought that Travis is a wide receiver. They'd said that publicly. I think Andrew Berry's made that clear several times. The issue from a fantasy perspective, in terms of the question I have for you, he's a better cornerback right now. It's more instinctive for him. So it's going to take some time, that learning curve. Sort of like how we saw Quinshon Judkins. Felt like he struggled. He's still sort of struggling to really put it together. And then you see other guys sort of put it together a little quicker in terms of not playing quote unquote slow. And Travis was always the best athlete on the field. So he could just go out there and out athlete everyone in college. That's going to be a little bit more difficult as a wide receiver in the NFL. So I get it for Cleveland. I get it for the Giants. I get it for the Patriots. So the teams picking 2, 3, and 4. Offense makes more sense, but you have to have a plan to use him in a smart way and to limit his reps. But I'm going to turn it around. Like when he's drafted, where are you drafting him in these fantasy drafts? And like, you don't get points for the defensive side of the ball, right?
No, we've had this conversation. I think, Dave can probably address it a little bit more, but internally it seems like we're just going to make him one position for draft purposes, or at least during the leagues. I don't know, Dave, can we customize that or not at all?
You're saying that like I've got control over it.
No. I know you've had some conversations about it. So
here's what I would say is expect him to be receiver eligible unless it's made clear he's going to play cornerback, in which case he will be cornerback eligible and not wide receiver eligible. If you guys, and I mean everybody listening, if you've got thoughts on how he should be made available, let me know. You know how to get in touch with me. You can even do it in the YouTube comments. I'll read them, I promise. And I can push that along to our developers. Obviously, perfect world situation, you'd get points for every catch he gets, every interception he gets, every tackle that he gets. I'm not sure if that's how all fantasy managers want it to be. I said it would be in a perfect world. Maybe that's not how it's supposed to be, because there's an inherent advantage into a player like that. And I know that it doesn't work that way. Correct me if I'm wrong, Adam and Jamie, for Shohei Ohtani in baseball when he was pitching and hitting over the course of, a whole season. I don't think you were allowed to get all the pitching points and all the hitting points for Ohtani in a given week.
I don't even know how it works now, but the way, because our team is so bad, Shohei Ohtani wouldn't even want to be on our fantasy team. But the way it did work originally was you drafted Ohtani, you had to choose, and we played in a weekly league, you had to choose every week. Are you starting him as a hitter or a pitcher? And you would only get those points. You would not get both. Now, you could get hitter one week, pitcher the next week, but you could not get both at the same time. Right. And I'm pretty sure you can't do that now. It would be, well, first of all, last year it didn't pitch, whatever, but it would be too unfair. And, I think he would be like in an auction league out of $100, you'd probably go for like $70. He'd be so much better than everyone. So I don't know with Hunter, I wouldn't want both stats to count. Some people would, but we'll deal with that at some other time. Listen, I'm sorry. We got to take a break.
I actually had another just note to make on Travis Hunter, if you don't mind.
Yeah, and then we got to take a break, and then I want to get your thoughts.
I'll be quick on this. And Ryan, you can react to this if you want to, but we know that Cleveland's got 3 great cornerbacks already on their roster. It's Denzel Ward, it's Greg Newsome, it's Martin Emerson. Emerson and Newsome are scheduled to be free agents after this year. Denzel Ward isn't 100%. He's got concussion issues. He misses games every single year. It would make sense for Cleveland to have a long-term view of Hunter as a corner to have as a replacement for one of Newsome or Emerson, Ward, if they move on from him after this year. But for his rookie season, he could end up playing wide receiver because the Browns have so many good cornerbacks as it is.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And Kevin Stefanski, as much as we like to forget, actually won 11 games in 2023. He's a really good coach. He's just sort of dealing with a lot of other things. And they got to get the quarterback situation sorted as well, because For as much as I love Kenny Pickett on the Steelers, I love him even more as a Steelers fan when he's a Browns quarterback.
Can we wrap up quarterback talk when we come back, Adam?
Yeah, let's do it. We'll be right back on Fantasy Football Today.
Critics are buzzing about the new season of Yellow Jackets.
This is not healthy.
Yellow Jackets' new season now streaming on the Paramount Plus with Showtime plan.
All right, welcome back, everybody. We've got Ryan Wilson joining us here. You can listen to him on the With the First Pick podcast. Dave, what did you want to talk about with quarterbacks?
So I am not the biggest Shedeur Sanders guy. Ryan, I don't know if you saw his last game against BYU, but that scared the pants off me. Sorry for the visual. But I do want to tell you that when in the rare circumstances, and this is in a number of games, this isn't the BYU game where Shedeur had a clean pocket, he was settled, he wasn't running all over the place, and he was really focused downfield. He was really good. And I'm wondering if that's what a team might see in him is, okay, if we can get the situation around him great, where he's got good protection and he has more than 2 seconds to make a decision, yeah, he can throw 15 to 20 yards, on a line, no problem. And if that's the case, then he could end up being a really good quarterback. Is that what teams are seeing? Is that what you see in Shedeur Sanders, where when everything's right, this guy will be great?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it, Dave, because every one of these quarterbacks any year, really, like if they're in a situation where they're running for their lives a lot, even Kaleb Williams last year at USC, that offensive line stunk and that hero ball didn't translate. And the thing that also Shedeur didn't have last year, in addition to an offensive line, the running game was absolutely terrible. Now, Pittsburgh doesn't make a great fit in terms of the weather. You'd rather play indoors than New Orleans, for example, and maybe even with Kellen Moore. But Arthur Smith is going to run the ball in Pittsburgh, and you're not going to be asked to throw the ball 50 times a game. And if you can just force yourself to start playing on time and not trying to make every play into a home run. And that's actually a bigger issue for Cam than for Shedeur. Cam will turn down check downs to try to throw 50-yard lasers. And a lot of times it worked out. Shedeur doesn't have that arm strength or that luxury. He's a good athlete, not a great athlete, but he can play on time and he can get the ball out on time and he throws pretty accurately to second, third levels. He has a great deep ball, but he's got to play on time and you got to give them a running game. Steelers offensive line actually has a chance to be pretty good as a young unit. They have to draft a running back to help out Jalen Warren since they moved him from Najee, and they can do that in the third round or even on day 3. And I think there's an opportunity for success there, but it's just so hard to figure out what these guys – like no one knew that Jayden Daniels was actually going to land in the perfect system with Dan Quinn year 1 and Cliff Kingsbury year 1. And certainly Sean Payton, we all thought he was just being arrogant. He actually knew what he was doing with Bo Nix. And now that team is one in which has very few needs, which is a crazy thing to say about a Denver Broncos team who a year ago had a million needs.
All right, why don't we wrap up
like anything else? It comes down to who's coaching these guys and how they'll be used and how they'll be trained, potentially made better by these coaches.
All right, why don't we wrap up quarterbacks with your top 5 quarterbacks, Ryan?
Cam, Shedeur, and I have both those guys going in the first round. Jackson Dart is a mid to late second round guy for me personally, and then the guy I've been high on for forever because he's a local kid, at least last 12 months local. Kyle McCord out of Syracuse. He had a great season, set the AC passing record. He's 6'3", he's 218. He's got a better arm than you think in person. Throws with anticipation better than anyone in this class. And then it's Will Howard for me, just ahead of Jalen Milroe. And all 6 of those guys added an extra one there are day 1, day 2 guys. Behind them, Quinn Ewers and Tyler Shuck. And I think I would take them on day 3. I suspect Tyler Shuck will go earlier than that, and Quinn Ewers probably goes late day 2, early day 3.
Okay, sorry. One more quarterback question.
Yeah.
Odds you think that Jalen Milroe is by far the most exciting prospect because he's an incredible rusher. What do you think he can do? Can he figure it out as a passer? Can he be an NFL quarterback?
I wish he'd come back for one more year at Alabama because of what Kalen DeBoer and Michael Penix Jr. did together at Washington for 2 years. Because Michael Penix Jr. in Indiana was more athlete than thrower. And then we saw him become a pocket passer at Washington. And obviously a lot of that has to do with Michael Penix Jr. as well. We just didn't see that last year for Jalen Milroe outside of that Georgia game. He's got to get better throwing in Dave, and I saw this at the Senior Bowl. Second level sort of touch throws, and then third level deep throws, throwing with anticipation. He can throw the ball. He throws a 100-mile-an-hour fastball. He just doesn't throw with anticipation. He doesn't throw into small windows. And if you can fix that, and that's a big if, he could be a really good football player. But the athletic stuff you're talking about, Adam, that's a no-brainer. He's already the best athlete, one of the best athletes in this draft class. It's just which coach can unlock the Jalen Milroe you need to have success as a pocket passer in the NFL. And that's just a huge issue for me, and that's why I have him below McCord and Will Howard in terms of possible day 2 guys.
All right, top 5 running backs for you, Ryan.
Ashton Genty, slam dunk. He's in the same conversation. And some people disagree with me on this part as Bijan and Jahmyr Gibbs. I think he's that sort of player. He didn't catch a lot of passes in 2024. He caught a ton of passes in 2023, so he can do that as well. He's 5'8", so that's tall enough. There's some concerns they might be shorter than that. Omarion Hampton out of UNC feels like a juiced up version of Javonte Williams coming out of UNC a few years ago. Between the tackles guy, he can run outside. He's he's a track background, and he can catch and block. Then Trey Henderson out of Ohio State. And a guy I like a lot more than most people. He's only been playing running back for a couple of years. Rashard Smith out of the U. You guys might remember from back in the day. He's a wide receiver. So he's automatically the best receiving running back in this draft class because of his background. He's getting better as a runner in terms of what it takes to have the instincts to play running back. He just hasn't done it a lot, but he'll run between the tackles as an undersized guy, and he gives you that sort of – he's not Christian McCaffrey, but he can use him in that way. And then finally, Quinshon Judkins, who transferred from Ole Miss to Ohio State, and he's more David Montgomery to Trey Henderson's Jahmyr Gibbs, if you want to use that comparison. He's more bulldozer, but he can bounce it outside as well. A little bigger, ran sub 4.5, and he is just as much a workhorse as Omarion Hampton in my mind in terms of between the tackles running. So all those guys I have going first, second, or third round.
Boy, Jamie, it's so interesting to get different top fives, like Rashard Smith. Rashard Smith, yeah, he went to Miami, so I'm familiar with him, but he didn't do much at Miami. Then he went to SMU, and they played him at running back. He had a really big year. He's a small guy. He is so explosive. But to see the different guys, like for Emory last week, he had Trevor Etienne and he had Jayden Blue in his top five. So, I wonder what kind of surprises were in store for Jamie after I feel like the top three will probably be, Genty, Hampton, Henderson. I'm not sure about 2 and 3, what order, but yeah, it's going to, I guess what I'm saying is could be a lot of names that we see on day 2 and we just don't know who it is.
And that's the beauty of this class. I think there's so much talent, as Emory said, he was comparing the 2017 class of, all the guys that are still, very popular in today's NFL, that we get this, 5-6 years from now, same type of production. But yeah, that's the fun of it. I think it's going to come down to, what team likes a certain style, likes a certain player. They're looking for a starter, a backup, a guy that could be more physical like a Judkins, or a guy that could be a little bit more of a, as Pete would say, an air back like Smith. So there's lots of different ways that these teams can go. And then it's how we and our audience react to those things that are going to be fun because, is, Smith going to be viewed as a lead guy, let's say like maybe Antonio Gibson was a few years ago when, he really was miscast in that role for Washington, for example, so there's going to be a lot of different, twists and turns, I think, with this, but it starts at the top. You're hearing maybe Jacksonville and Genty, and that is fun and frightening, for his fantasy value, so all those questions, are this is the position, this is the thing for us right now because the quarterback class is weak, the wide receiver class for the most part is weak. Adam, I don't know if you know this, or were you in the draft on Friday with Heath?
No.
So only 4 receivers went in the rookie draft in the first round.
Super flex,
which is still shocking. There were 2 quarterbacks. I don't want to spoil Heath's content, but there were only 4 wide receivers that went in the first round.
Now you including Hunter? Did he go in the first round?
Including Hunter, yeah.
Okay.
So 4 receivers in the first round. So the receiver class is weak, the quarterback class is weak. We know the tight ends are good, but they're not going to go early. Aside, the top 2 will go early in the first round. But for our purposes, this is going to be the position we spend a lot of time dissecting.
I feel like I got to follow up here on Rashard Smith. 5'10", 194 pounds, again, out of SMU. He ran a 4.39 40. Now, Antonio Gibson had 33 carries in 2 seasons at Memphis. Tyrone Tracy had very few carries in his first 5 seasons in college. Then he had 113 with Purdue in his last year. Rashard Smith had 235 carries last year. So by that measure, he's got more experience than those other guys. He averaged 5.7 yards per carry, which is good. It's not great in college, but it's very solid. Seeing him 4th is very interesting. So go ahead, Ryan. What do you want to say about Rashard Smith?
Oh, yeah. He had 56 targets, only 2 drops. To talk about the wide receiver background, 7 of his games are over 100 yards. And, yes, he's 5'9", he's 194, but you talked about the sub-4.4 speed. He reminded me a little bit of a Bucky Irving coming out of Oregon. Bucky ran in the 4.5s, and I think was a 4th-round pick. He's a day 3 guy. Mm-hmm. So you get a little more juice in terms of the 40 speed, and that who knows if that translates or not. And your running backs don't have to run 4.4s. They can run 4.6s and be fine. But I feel like if you're getting a Bucky Irvin, I would imagine Bucky was relatively popular as a fantasy back last year. You guys would, so it feels like he has that potential. And 194 is at 5'9", just shaded at 5'10". That's plenty big in the way he was used at SMU, and that's the way you would use him at the next level, I feel like.
All right. Dave, you want to follow up on running backs? You want to move to his top 5 wide receivers?
No, I'd actually like to have a few minutes to talk about Hampton and Judkins, if we may. Adam and I have noticed on Hampton that there are a lot of times where he'll hesitate after getting the ball. And this is on carries, Ryan. And that combined with just how big he is and the pad level that he plays with, it makes me nervous that he'll get hit in the backfield a lot and won't be a monster like he was against college competition. I'd like your opinion on that, and if it can be fixed. And then I'll ask a quick question about Judkins.
Yeah, I think part of the issue with Hampton last year is that team was so terrible that he was sort of the only show in town. I mean, that team, I watch a lot of college. I don't pay attention to the rankings, but they were definitely a top 25 team, maybe better than that coming into the season. They just fell apart to the point they were trying to run Mac Brown out in the middle of the season. So I'm less concerned about that because, and I say that, Dave, with the understanding, again, as a Steelers fan, watching Najee Harris get hit in the backfield consistently, 25 times a game for the Steelers, and that was an issue for him at Alabama because he was playing behind a good offensive line. And, one of the popular landing spots for Omarion is at pick 20 to the Denver Broncos, and that feels like you're going to get the best case Omarion Hampton there. So I think if you put him on a crappy team, you're going to see similar stuff. And he was still really good last year, by the way. He's a borderline first-round pick for me, and he could very easily go in the first round. And I think he's better than Javonte, like I said, who was a second-round pick, if I recall. So those are less concerning issues for me because if you put any player on a super terrible team, they're not going to get the best versions of themselves. So I think landing spot always matters. You usually set up for quarterbacks. But I think once he gets to the NFL and gets behind a good offensive line, you're going to see the best version of Omarion Hampton.
Yeah, and we're all hoping for that, and we're all nervous about Genty ending up with a team where the offensive line will stink, and Genty might not be able to overcome that and play to his ceiling. All right, Quinshon Judkins. Adam and I have also noticed that his top gear isn't that fast, especially compared to a lot of other running backs in the league, and that's something that I just don't think can be improved upon, especially considering that he's already at 221 pounds. I don't know why a team would want to make him a little bit lighter. He also doesn't use his agility as much, and that kind of worries me a little bit that he's trying to kind of play as like the rundowns guy.
Yeah.
Did that impact how you felt about him? And do you think teams will just look at that and immediately disqualify him as being even like a second round pick because he doesn't have the second gear in a deep class?
It's funny, Dave. I actually had those same concerns, and I was not as high on him as most folks in the media. And I get it. He's not Trevion Henderson, who does have some short area quickness, who has the ability to bounce it and then turn the corner. Okay. Even though he did run that sub 4.5, Quinshon didn't play as fast for me, and that's why he's more bowling ball between the tackles guy for me. One cut and go. So the concerns you have are the ones I have, and then it comes down to team fit. What are teams looking for? How does that fit into their system? If you're running a zone scheme and you get a one cut and go guy, you're ready to go there with Quinshon Judkins, and he just drags guys down the field. But for me, he was like a third round pick, and maybe even borderline day 2, day 3. And that's no disrespect to him; it's just class is so deep. But some people like him better than Trey Henderson. I think our buddy Lee J. Doosable does. So it's just going to come down to what you're looking for in a running back. But I shared your concerns, and it's sort of funny. I haven't heard a lot of people outside of you and me say those things. So I don't know. We'll find out if we're right or wrong. But I'm sort of with you on the view of Quinshon.
I'm not huge on him. And I know I don't want to be a YPC for life guy because I used to get some heat for that. But in the Big Ten, well, but I'm not at all. I think I've replaced that with big playability, which I think is really what separates running backs. But his big playability is not on the same level as a lot of the other guys. Like, for example, Kaleb Johnson. Now, Kaleb Johnson, I should mention, he, out of Iowa, had the slowest 10-yard split among running backs, and he ran a 4.57 40. So he didn't really test well. And the slowest 10-yard split, that does bother me a little bit. But his big playability, much more frequently, than pretty much any other running back. Remember, I gave that stat about percentage of carries that went for 20 or more yards. I looked at like 11 running backs that are going to get drafted pretty early, and Kaleb Johnson was the leader there. I'm saying he's my favorite. But Judkins, what bothers me about Judkins, I gave this stat last time on last show. He averaged 4.2 yards per carry in the Big Ten. His teammate, Travion Henderson averaged 6.5 yards per carry in the Big Ten. And that is just a huge, huge gap for me. And I don't know. It bugs me. I don't know, Ryan, if that matters at all to you, but to say that the guy that you're sharing a backfield with averaged 2.3 more yards per carry than you in the Big Ten, and 4.2 yards per carry in college is just not good. So that stands out to me, that he just kind of beat up on the inferior competition earlier in the season. He also was great in the national championship game, which I think is sticking in people's minds. But I'm hoping that Judkins lands in a bad spot so I don't have to make a tough call on him. And I'm also hoping that Henderson lands up in a good spot, because my gut wants me to have Henderson ahead of Omarion Hampton. I absolutely love him.
Oh,
That's how I feel.
He's exactly what you want in the NFL these days. He's just so fast. He just beats defenders to the spot. Like Jameer.
Let's fix with him too.
What do you think, Ryan?
You know, what's funny as you guys are talking, and this is something that we were talking about at the combine as the running backs are coming through. And again, I'll liken it back to my Steelers connection, because Najee Harris versus Jalen Warren. Running backs starting to look a lot more like Jalen Warren now than Najee Harris, and they're having a lot more success. And I think that's the conversation with Judkins and Kaleb Johnson as well. They're not big, and they're sort of built like those guys, and now they're sort of evolving into what Jalen Warren looks like and playing that way. And to keep the comparison going, Jalen Warren was way more effective than Najee Harris behind the same offensive line, to your Ohio State point, and you wonder why. And if you watch the game, you can sort of figure it out. Now, there's a closer gap between Quinshon and Trey, and I think they're both really good players, but there are reasons to ask those questions if the yards per carry are 2 yards separating them behind the same offensive line in the same competition.
To me, it's elusiveness. I just think that it's just the fact that Henderson is just much more. He's got more wiggle, looser hips, make you miss, and Judkins can't do that. I think it's like that with any type of thunder and lightning type of combo that's out there.
But David Montgomery was – I'm sorry, JB. I was going to say David Montgomery was pretty successful, though.
Adam, who would you prefer if this happens? If Henderson gets drafted to the Steelers at 21 and Judkins goes to the Raiders in round 2?
For this year, I would take Judkins for sure. Dynasty, I really cannot see a scenario where I take Judkins over Henderson. I just think Henderson is such a better player. But it's a great call, right? That's where it gets really tough. That's it. I'm going to throw some more running back names at you. I want to get your thoughts. Kaleb Johnson, you like him?
No. As a person, I love him. He's a little too upright for me. And even before the 40 time came out, I remember watching him in the fall thinking, why are we having these first-round conversations about Kaleb Johnson? And again, to parrot Pete Prisco and Jamie Eisenberg, I do not want to crap on him as a person, but just football-wise, if I'm stacking him, he's not in the same conversation these guys were talking about. So thank you for laughing at that, Jamie.
Your job is to evaluate them.
I know, but I'm like the world's softest.
We love them all as human beings for the most part. Your job is to evaluate them.
That's right. If that's the disclaimer, I do not like him as a first or second, maybe even third round pick.
Now, if he was sitting next to you and I said, hey, this guy doesn't like you as a person.
And that could very easily happen if you're sitting next to Jamie.
I would never do that to you.
Cam Skattebo out of Arizona State.
Love him. The only concern is how much longer can he play that way? And it feels like the expiration date is in months and not years, because he is the angriest, hardest working football player on the field, but it's just not sustainable physically, it feels like. Like, I would take him in the 4th round because of the physical shortcomings, quotation mark, but he's a first round football player.
Yeah, exactly. Dylan Sampson out of Tennessee.
I had this conversation. Jalen Wright I liked better last year coming out. He ran a little bit faster, and the issue with Dylan is that he fumbles. So, I mean, if you like your running back to turn the ball over, then I get it. But otherwise, I wouldn't take him until day 3.
I think Jameis would probably draft him as a GM.
Who, Jameis? Yeah, the Giants draft him. All right, just give me one more name, because I see Bachel Tootin pretty high in rankings.
Love him.
DJ Higgins. All right, go ahead, Tootin, go.
Yeah, I love Tootin. He has fumbling issues as well, but he's a 4.3 guy. He plays that fast. He's a little undersized in the Jalen Warren mold. He can run between the tackles. He can bounce it. He can catch balls coming out of the backfield. He's a game changer. He played much of last season with a knee brace on. He was still outrunning guys in the end zone. And the other guy I'll mention to keep it real here in Central New York, LaQuinn Allen's only 20 years old out of Syracuse. A little more upright. He didn't run anywhere in the pre-draft process, which means he's probably not fast, but he plays fast. Another guy, we were talking with Brashard Smith. He can catch the ball coming out of the backfield, so he gives you that versatility as well. Those are two other guys that I like as potential day 2-ish, borderline day 3 guys.
Are there any other day 2-ish running backs that you feel like we need to mention?
RJ Harvey out of UCF, I love. And then right there as you sort of day 2, day 3, Jarquez Hunter out of Auburn. But the thing is, and I think Jamie was talking about this earlier, I literally have 25 guys that could go in the first 4 or 5 rounds. So that's so deep at running back, and one's flavor of ice cream is going to be different in terms of how these guys are ranked. But it's going to be hard to miss on these guys in the first 4 or 5 rounds if you just pull a name out of a hat, because these guys have been so good.
All right, we got to take a break. We'll talk wide receivers when we come back on FFT. Welcome back. Dave, you haven't talked in a while. Can you just please ask Ryan for his top 5 wide receivers?
Let's assume that Travis Hunter is going to play cornerback, unless you don't have Travis Hunter as your. Well, I'll start with this. Would Travis Hunter be your number 1 wide receiver?
Dave, I'm still on Ted McMillan out of Arizona, and the lesson I've tried to make sure I remember is that when T. Higgins came out, I liked him a lot in the fall, and then he ran quote-unquote slowish during the pre-draft process. So I said, he's not fast enough, so I had him as a second-round pick. He's a first-round pick. Same with Tet. I don't care what Tet runs. I've seen Tet play, and it feels like the longer we go between the end of the season and the draft, the more we convince ourselves these kids stink. And as our buddy Rick Spielman used to say, you hate them up until the moment you draft them, and then suddenly you love them again. I like Ted McMillan. Like I don't have to overthink it. And I had him in this mock draft I did this morning. What I would do, quote, I have him going to the Jaguars at 5, sort of along the lines of thinking about Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson together, thinking about Jamar and T together, just to help out a young quarterback. And that defense in Jacksonville isn't nearly as bad as Cincinnati. So there's an opportunity for them to turn things around with Liam Cohen. They can get defense later. But especially like Mason Graham's the landing spot, the defensive tackle out of Michigan at 5, usually in these mock drafts. But there's defensive line classes insanely deep. So get a wide receiver if you love them, pair with Brian Thomas Jr., and then figure the rest out later.
Okay, so the top 5 would have Tet 1, go through the others.
Travis 2. If we don't include Travis, Matthew Golden out of Texas, who I love, 3. Luther Burden is next. And those guys are all first-round grades for me. Then Emeka Egbuka is top of the second for me at Ohio State.
Man. Yeah, Golden and Burden to me are the 2 guys that I know they're so important for our job, right? Because they're going to get drafted early. I don't know how I feel about them. So tell us how you feel about Matthew Golden out of Texas, Luther Burden out of Missouri.
So, yeah, Golden's a transfer from Houston, and going into the season, the guy to watch was Isaiah Bond, who battled injuries, and now he's battling some off-field stuff. But Matthew Golden is a legit track guy. I think he ran a 4.29. And I sort of joke, the only person that really plays 4.29 is probably Tyreek. But this guy plays fast enough. And my comp for him was Jordan Addison, except he outweighs Jordan by about 15 pounds coming out. He's about 194, just a hair under 6 feet. I think he's 5'10", 5'11". But he can play outside. He can play inside. He has return ability. So he can do all those things that Jordan Addison does. I feel like he can do it at that level. Luther Burden is interesting in that his season last year wasn't great, but that's because Brady Cook, their quarterback, was banged up the entire year. If you watch 2023, both Brady Cook and Luther Burden look like playmakers. And I think that's what you get with Luther Burden at the next level. And he plays mostly slot, but he's 6 feet, almost 200. He might be 200, ran sub 4.5. So he plays bigger than perhaps he looks. And he's pretty big physically. And I think that the speed I have no concern with. Emeka Egbuka is one of these guys I feel like we're sleeping on just because he does everything at like a B+, A-, but he doesn't do anything spectacularly. Right. He's a huge slot. He runs faster than Jackson Smith and Jigba coming out. He's a professional like route runner. He's going to be exactly where you want him to be if you're a quarterback. You can rely on him. Great hands, yada, yada, yada. So he could end up being the most efficient of these guys early on in his career just because he's more advanced. But landing spot, yada, yada, yada. The other name I'll mention, wide receiver 6, Jalen Royals out of Utah State. Didn't talk a lot about him because he got hurt in October. This dude can play. Like he is. They used him at Utah State sort of like they used Malachi Corley at Western Kentucky, but I think he's a better athlete and a better route runner.
Jalen Royals and Matthew Golden had the fastest 10-yard split.
Ooh, thank you.
Yeah, at the combine. They were tied. Royals ran a 4.42. And is he a slot guy? Well, no, I put in my notes he can play out wide or in the slot. So that's,
and he has return ability too.
Okay. Jamie, would you say, he said that Ibuka is does everything at like a B+, A-, does nothing spectacular. You think that describes me too?
It's a little bit too lofty for you.
Yeah.
Right.
And softball starts tonight, so definitely.
Oh, all right. Love to see it.
Yeah.
There goes that tennis swing.
Tennis swing is like a solid A right now. We're past the A-, but the forehand anyway.
Wait a second, Adam. Did you play a tennis match live?
I did.
Who'd you play against?
Dan Schneier.
That's right, you and Dan. Yeah, your stroke is pretty good. Like my son plays tennis in high school. Doesn't work hard at it at all, but whatever. But I appreciated watching someone care about what they were doing and trying to do it at a high level. So kudos to you, sir.
The records show that Ryan seeked out the live stream of Adam playing tennis.
I
but
remember
Adam
that.
doesn't even bother to follow Ryan Wilson. On
Thank you,
media,
Dave.
or look up his mock drafts right before the show starts.
And just to clarify, to placate Jamie, when I say B+, A- for Mecca Ibuka, I really mean A+. Let's be real.
So I just want to let you know this came up at dinner yesterday. Apparently, if you Google my name, the fourth thing that comes up is Adam Azer tennis match. So I guess a lot
What
of
are the
people,
first three?
just me, Adam Azer wife, Adam Azer Twitter, Adam Azer tennis match. That's
And Dan's actually a pretty good tennis player, as I recall.
yeah,
Is that
very
right?
good.
Yeah.
But
Better than Adam.
I'm gonna
Which
give
is
him.
Dan is very good in comparison to Adam.
No, he's very good. He's a very good player. He played in high school, and I think he actually put some work into it in high school. So your son should talk to Dan.
There we go. Got it.
All right. Anyway, Jamie, go ahead talk about. I'm sorry, I haven't gotten you involved enough. So, of course,
Well, I'm just enjoying the conversation. Jayden Higgins, your thoughts on him, and Jack Bech, another guy who's getting a lot of pub lately.
Yeah, huge Jack Bech guy. I liked watching. It's a Louisiana pronunciation apparently, because I called him Bech as well.
Yeah.
He was an LSU guy, transferred to TCU, and I remember watching him in the fall, going, "Good Lord, why are we not talking about this guy?" He never ran, or if he did, he didn't run super fast. I don't care. He plays plenty fast. Me and Dave saw him at the Senior Bowl, and he went off there. He was dominating practice, had a really good game. I'm not high on Jayden Higgins. I haven't been throughout the process. I had a day 3 grade on him, and then our buddy Lige Douzable was like, dude, this guy has a chance to be a top 50 pick. So I went back and watched him again. I'm moving up a little bit more. He ran sub 4.5. He doesn't play that fast. Like everyone gets on Ted McMillan for not separating. Jayden Higgins doesn't separate either. He's 6'4", and he's a long strider, and he does all those things well. I think Ted is a level or two above what Jayden Higgins does. And that doesn't mean Jayden Higgins won't be a top 50 player. But let me see who my comp was for him, because I just couldn't get on board with him. And again, that doesn't mean anything other than one person. So Devonta Parker was sort of my comp.
That's fair, though.
Like big tester, and then you don't see it on tape necessarily, and that's okay. Like we'll see how it works out. But I would not take him. You guys talking about comparisons. One of the things that we were talking about the other day, we were doing these mock drafts. If you're the Raiders, for example, would you rather have Ashton Jeanty and Jayden Higgins, or would you rather have Ted McMillan and say Omarion Hampton? Like that's the sort of math you're trying to figure out where and when to take these guys.
But it's probably not going to be Hampton, right? Like, don't you think Hampton's going to be in the
Or
first?
even your guy Trey. Let's take Trey Henderson then. We'll take Trey Henderson instead.
I feel like he's going to be I don't know. I feel like he's going to be a first round pick too. But yeah, it could be Henderson. It could be certainly could be Judkins, right? It could be Ted.
I think Trey Henderson's probably not going to go in the first round, so he could be there at the top of the second for the Raiders. So you could have Ted and Trey, or you could have Ashton and Jayden Higgins. Was the conversation we're having?
I'd go Ted and Trey.
I would too, but
I think you probably have to go that route, right?
That's
unless you love Ashton Jeanty.
Yeah,
and I would guess. The problem is that there's a clear difference between the type of running back Jeanty is to Henderson, and Jeanty can do a lot of what Henderson can do. Henderson can't do a lot of what Ashton can do. I'm going to side on Jeanty and Higgins because I think as good as McMillan is, and he's definitely got that agility that Jayden Higgins doesn't have. You're still going to get a big guy who's 6'4", who you're just going to throw up 50-50 balls and he's going to win them. I like Higgins, and I love his hands. Like I 1-2 drops maybe over his time at Iowa State, and
145 targets.
He went on. Like I think that he could end up being one of the 5 best receivers in this class, and someone who could, with good target volume, could be an asset in fantasy football.
Yeah, I wouldn't push back on that. I just, when I started stacking these guys, and to your point, Dave, 145 targets, just 2 drops. So he's catching everything you throw towards him, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
I just didn't see what our buddy Lige saw in terms of him being a top 50 pick.
Oh, no, he doesn't have the wiggle that McMillan has. He doesn't have the footwork, and I don't think he ever will. So, like, there's a drop off there, but you're still getting ultimately a big receiver, and you're getting a better running back in Genty.
The Raiders would be doing like a fantasy draft that way. Oh, see,
Yeah,
I got this guy in round 1, and then round 2, I'll get the receiver.
Right.
Right.
That's always the hardest part about justifying a running back in the first round, right? I mean, when the Giants took Barkley, Nick Chubb, they could have had Nick Chubb in the second round, right? So, but Barkley's obviously amazing. I do want to know, how you feel about Hunter, because you have him second. Do you think he can be a great receiver? How about comparing Hunter and McMillan to, let's say, Rome Odunze this time last year?
Where would I have those 3 stacked?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Rome and Tet would probably be pretty close. Travis is my wide receiver 2 just because he doesn't play full time. He would be my wide receiver 1 if that was his only job, just because he'd be somewhere further along. Because now he's just playing sort of on feel, and he's a good enough route runner. They didn't ask him to do a whole bunch, a lot of screens, a lot of hitches, a lot of go balls. So we have to see how that fits in. And I think we heard Joe Shane talk about how they would use Travis in that role on offense at the next level, should they draft him, so on and so forth. But I think 3 years from now, Travis Hunter could be the best wide receiver out of this draft class and one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. He just hasn't done it a lot.
Okay.
If there's anybody to trust, it's Joe Shane.
Adam Azer, 2023.
Throw out some wide receiver names at you. Give me a quick thought.
Yep.
Ellick Iomanor out of Stanford.
Big. He's not gonna. He ran pretty well, but he doesn't play fast. But he's a possession receiver. He reminds me of Anquan Bolden, like that sort of player, and you can rely on a security blanket for your quarterback.
Trey Harris out of Ole Miss. I was very impressed. He has a 79% catch rate with a 12-yard ADOT. One of the best. They should come up with a stat for this, but like the high-ish ADOT, high catch rate. You don't see that. Trey Harris really excelled there. What do you think about him?
I like him a lot, and the issue, the hesitation is that coming out of that Ole Miss offense, sometimes the quarterbacks and wide receivers don't translate. Even though Lane Kiffin, runs what's considered like a really efficient, high-powered offense, it just feels like those guys sometimes when they get to the next level don't exactly put it together. His name escapes me. The second-round pick of the Panthers, who they traded to the Cowboys,
Jonathan Mingo,
like that. That didn't work out, and maybe it does. But and when they drafted him, I was like, I don't know. Trey Harris is a much better player than Mingo coming out in my mind. But I think he has a chance to be good, and he feels like a day 2 guy, so I'd be comfortable with that.
do you like his speed?
Yeah, no, I think he plays plenty fast. I think it was the LSU game. He was just running past guys all day long.
Yes.
One of the first plays of the game, I think he just dropped that bomb from Jackson Dart, but he can get open. He's a big body too.
That's exactly what happened. Trey Harris dropped one on the first play, and then on the next drive, he caught one. He just kept getting behind guys on LSU, and he ran a 4.54. But I'm glad you say that because I look at him like I even wrote it in my notes. He looks faster than his 40 time.
Yeah.
So yeah. Let's see, Isaiah Bond. So we know he's dealing with this sexual assault accusation. He says he's innocent. I'm not going to get into that, but he is super. Texas has every fast guy in the world apparently. 4.39 40. Isaiah Bond, you think he's if there were no off-field issues, do you think he's a second-round pick kind of player?
He's second, third round if we're just talking about on-field productivity. And he was banged up for part of last year, and then when you go back and watch him, like, oh, this dude's getting open and making plays. Alabama transferred. I'm like, why is he transferring? And I don't know if it served him well or not because of the injury, but I understood what he was thinking. I think he's a day 2 guy strictly on the field. It's just a matter of how much off the field is going to be a problem. I'm going to throw a name at you guys too, a guy that I watched in the fall, and we're starting to talk about him a little more, but Dante Thornton Jr. out of Tennessee, 6'4", 200 pounds, ran to the 4.3s, and he is a poor man's version of Brian Thomas Jr. that you just throw go balls to him, and he catches them. And he's not 185. He is thick. He's a track guy, and Oregon transfer, and all he does is make plays like down the field. And I love him as a sort of I think my comp for him was like Martavis Bryant. When he came out, they just threw him deep balls and threw him slants and let him do the rest. That's Dante Thornton Jr. And then he sort of grows into the role and you teach him how to run routes, yada, yada, yada. But day 1 deep ball threat, and he has the physicality to be a high point sort of contested catch guy too.
Give me your thoughts on Kyle Williams out of Washington State.
I don't love him as much as some of our buddies do. Like, again, Lige likes him a little bit more. I think Mike Renner likes him a little bit more. He plays outside. He can play inside. He had a good Senior Bowl. I think he's more possession receiver for me than sort of juiced up athlete. He tested pretty well, but I wasn't on the Kyle Williams train like some other folks were. I have him as a day 3 guy, like 4th, 5th rounder.
Dave, you saw him at the Senior Bowl, Kyle Williams. Any thoughts?
I thought he was okay at the Senior Bowl, but he didn't stand out to me. I don't think he was one of the top 2 or 3 best receivers that was there. He's somebody I'm studying this week.
And we had Chris Trapasso on last week, and he really likes the guy out of Florida, Elijah Badger.
Oh, he's a huge Elijah Badger guy, yeah.
Yeah, he had him 5th. What do you think about Elijah Badger?
If you're going to draft a Florida receiver, I would go with Chimera DK. I like him a little better. Slot guy, he's big, ran really well. He just runs away from guys in the middle of the field and on these sort of man beaters, and that's where I would go. Like Badger, I have going like late day, day 3. DK, I would take him in the 4th and feel pretty good about it. I'm looking now. My comp for Badger was Tajay Sharp, so he's a number 4 on your team, wide receiver wise.
Okay,
I think DK could be a number 3, number 4, but you put him in the slot and 3rd down and just have him beat guys in the middle of the field, and he's a yak guy too.
let's get to the tight ends.
Gave Dave a heart attack.
Yeah.
Is Sharp
One of my guys from many years ago.
Oh, okay. Oh, look at that. Who knew? he's your Brees Hall.
We got some good.
I wish it was my Brees Hall.
We got some good suggestions in the chat for what comes up if you Google Adam Azer. So stay tuned at the end for some of those. The chat never lets us down. All right, tight ends.
Yeah.
All right, give me your top 5.
Colson Loveland is just ahead of.
No, it is Tyler Warren. Come on, Ryan Wilson.
Here's the thing. No one helped themselves outside of perhaps Cam Ward more this fall than Tyler Warren. Like he was a day 2, day 3 guy in the summer. We talked about him on the podcast I host. Adam is called With the First Pick. You should check that out. Colson Loveland was the victim of terrible quarterback play last year. Sort of like we talked about with Luther Burden when Brady Cook was hurt. But he was J.J. McCarthy's go-to guy in 2023, and he's basically a big slot. He's more Jawan Jennings than Rob Gronkowski in that he's going to line up in the slot. He's one of the best route runners in this draft class. He's enormous. He's slender, but he's tall, big catch radius, and he actually runs through arm tackles despite his size. That said, I think in this mock draft and what I would do, I had Tyler Warren going first because he's a better fit in Indianapolis in my mind than Colson Loveland. So either one I'm fine on, and I like them very similarly just for different reasons. So Colson, Tyler Warren, Gunnar Helm I love out of Texas. He ran a 4.8 at the combine, but he had an ankle injury. If I were his agent, I'd be like, yo, man, your ankle isn't working. Let's run when you're healthy. But I give him credit for being, trying to tough it out. Mason Taylor out of LSU is next. He's Jason Taylor's son, and he's every bit the athlete, maybe a better athlete, which is crazy. And then Elijah Arroyo to rep Azer and Dave out of the U there. Another fantastic athlete who just battled some injury issues.
I'm putting this in my notes. Good stuff. Gunnar Helm ran a 4.8 but had an ankle injury. So when he gets drafted and we're talking about him on Saturday, I'm be like, guys, don't just remember he had an ankle injury. All right, so you go. Let me just recap everything.
That you credit the person who told you to.
I don't think we're going to do that. I heard it on this podcast with the 3rd pick or something like
with
that.
The 3rd pick is a great name.
So we've got your top 5 quarterbacks were Cam Sanders, Jackson Dart, Kyle McCord, Will Howard. Your top 5 running backs were Ashton Genty, Omarion Hampton, Travion Henderson, Brashard Smith, Quinshon Judkins. Top 5 wide receivers, Teteroa McMillan, Travis Hunter, Matthew Golden, Luther Burden, Emeka Ibuka. Top 5 tight ends, Loveland, Tyler Warren, Gunnar Helm, Mason Taylor, and Elijah Arroyo.
Yep.
All right, Jamie, anything you want to get into with the tight ends?
Who's your top 5 kickers?
We did a 7-round mock draft live on the podcast that I host. It's called With the First Pick, Adam. And not one special teams player was drafted, and I regretted it immediately afterwards. So I know the kicker from Miami is good, but beyond that, I don't know.
Or a Gallus, baby.
Or a Gallus. Yeah.
All right, but these tight ends are great. I mean, it's a great tight end class here. So
how many do you have in the first round?
Yeah.
I think just 2. Like, I would be shocked if 3 go. And the question is, how high? And, people get angry again, as you guys know, when you do these mock drafts. Fans get angry, but we did a mock draft with me and Pete Prisco, Brian McFadden, and Rand Carthon making all the first-round picks. And Tyler Warren lasted until the Commanders at whatever, pick 29 or 30, wherever they're picking, just because other things happened before. Right. That doesn't seem possible, but there was a run on running backs. There was a run on offensive linemen, whatever it was. So sometimes these weird, quirky things happen that aren't injury related, just the way that the board sort of unfolds. So that would be crazy. I don't think it'll happen that way. I think both these guys will be gone by pick 20. But, I mean, you never know.
I would be shocked if one of the two don't go to the Jets or the Colts.
Oh, the Jets. Interesting. At 7. At 7?
Yeah.
Oh, that's nice. I don't hate that because I have them taking an offensive lineman and people get angry about that, but whatever. But, I mean, they do have a real need there. And, again, we're talking about helping out young quarterbacks.
A bunch of scrubs everywhere else.
Yeah, exactly. And Garrett Wilson has made it clear that he's tired of having to carry the load as the only sort of guy in the wide receiver room / tight end room. They got Breece Hall, though, Jamie.
They do. And 2 other running backs that apparently they're going to use. Aaron Glenn said he basically hates Breece Hall as much as you do.
Once upon a time, before you guys, well, no, not before you knew me, but before I was making any types of predictions on the air.
I thought you said before you're making 7 figures.
Yeah, right. You're just going to have to take my word for it on this because it's really true. I loved Luke Kuechly. He was this guy. I was like, this guy is going to be one of the best players in this draft. Now, I could be making this up. I could be lying. But I loved Luke Kuechly. Tyler Warren is my Luke Kuechly. I love Tyler Warren. I think he's going to be one of the best players out of this draft. He is like George Kittle to me. Everything you said about Cam Skattebo is how I also feel about Tyler Warren. He's an absolute beast. And if he goes to the Jets, I'll be totally heartbroken. But if he goes to the Colts, I'll be even more heartbroken. So
Azer just said Tyler Warren will be a Hall of Famer.
I honestly think he has, I think he has certainly Pro Bowl to all pro potential. I don't know about Hall of Fame, but he is going to be everyone's favorite player. He's such a hardworking, just monster out there.
if he falls that far, I mean, I'd love to see the Chargers somehow find a way to get him.
Yeah. No, he feels like a Jim Harbaugh type guy too. I know his high school basketball coach. This will make you scribble this down, Adam. It'll make you even happier about him. Yeah. So he's a super quiet kid. Number one. Number two, like he played in a suburban Richmond high school, and he played center at 6'6", 235 at the time, and he was the only reason they were able to compete with the city schools in basketball because he was out there just balling out as a 6'6", 230. I don't know if he had long hair then. Center looking like perhaps Kurt Rambis. I don't know. But the athleticism is, I think, sometimes underrated, and I'm guilty of it as well when you compare him to Colson Loveland. He's insanely athletic. He's insanely driven. He cares about football. He doesn't do much else, and he's, by all accounts, a good kid.
I don't like that he's quiet, though. I want someone who's in your face and nasty.
You want Jeremy Shockey? Is that what you're looking for?
He's not quiet on the field. That's all that matters.
He's not. I hate him now.
I mean, Kurt Rambis, you're dating yourself, man.
Kurt Rambis.
I do. Like, who would be the closest version of a long-haired basketball playing Tyler Warren? Like, I don't even know.
Steven Adams. I was watching him last night.
I don't even know who that is.
But he's from New Zealand, though. Like, you can't go there.
Yeah, that's how far out of the loop I am.
All right. So
Rambis, wow.
I think Steven Adams didn't he write Dilbert? Does that date myself, Jamie? Scott Adams, I believe.
Dilbert. Gunnar Helm was an interesting one at 3.
Can we make a trade and Ryan hosts this show and you host the Third Pick podcast show?
The Third Pick. It's a Giants podcast. So these other guys, Helm, Mason Taylor, Elijah Arroyo. You didn't mention Harold Fannin Jr. He's probably right there.
He is right there. Yep.
How much potential do these guys have as NFL prospects?
Mason Taylor has the most upside. He's a sheer athlete at this point, sort of learning the position, but he'll block. And, you guys don't necessarily care about that for your purposes, but in terms of being an inline tight end. But again, it's funny because Randy Moss's son, Thaddeus Moss, played in that LSU team back during the Joe Burrow days. And he was good. I think he went undrafted, but Taylor Mason is legit. Like, his uncle, obviously, Zach Thomas, his dad's Jason Taylor. And the athleticism feels like it's not going to be Kyle Pitts level athleticism. And then the warning label that comes with that is that you have to use him properly. Kyle Pitts is still trying to figure that out. But you talk about Harold Fannin Jr. He's more of a big slot. Again, sort of the Malachi Corley comparison, but a little better, a little more efficient. He was the offense at Bowling Green. And then another player whose dad played in the league right below Harold for me is Aronde Gatson the second.
Yeah, I was just about to ask you about him as a Syracuse guy.
Yeah, he's 245. He looks in person like he is 265. He's 6'4" and change. He is thick for 245-ish, and he can play in line and block. but he was Kyle McCord's go-to security blanket in the middle of the field, and not just on short routes, but short, intermediate, and then he could run the seam. He ran a 4.65 at his pro day, and I think that's perfect for him. And Terrence Ferguson, I'll mention a couple of names, guys that are athletic tight ends that are going to get drafted. Terrence Ferguson out of Oregon had a good season last year. Mitchell Evans out of Notre Dame, not quite as athletic, but it's sort of a traditional tight end out of Notre Dame, as I mentioned. He also had a good year, again, with some up and down quarterback play with Riley Leonard.
Rondé Gadsden Sr., one of the best highlights in Dolphins history. When they lost to the Jaguars 62-7, he scored the only touchdown. I believe they were down 40 at that point. Maybe more, I don't even know. And he did his touchdown celebration, which was an OG, like with his arms. And it was like Austin Eckler when they were getting the bleep kicked out of them by the Raiders. And he does the first down when they're down 30.
It's like when Homer Simpson scored a touchdown. Was it in the Super Bowl, Adam? And he's doing all these dancing.
Oh, I hate that episode. I never watched that episode.
And it's like 62-7.
You know who I blame for that touchdown celebration down 60 points, guys? Rick Spielman. He was in the front office of Miami. He set the tone, and they followed suit. So that's Rick's fault.
Rick used to be on this podcast, great podcast.
What was it called, Adam?
With something. I don't remember. Harold Fannin Jr. I find amazing. I mentioned this a few weeks ago. First tight end in FBS history to lead the country in catches and receiving yards. And he did it on a team that was only 46th in the country in pass attempts. And he only played 13 games. Some guys are playing 15, 16 games. He had over 117 catches, 1,555 yards, 10 touchdowns. Amazing production from Harold Fannin Jr. And I didn't mention this, and I wanted to when we talked about him last time. 2 games against, big-time teams. 11 catches for 137 yards and a touchdown against Penn State. 8 catches, 145 yards and a touchdown against Texas A&M. There's a touchdown against Texas A&M. You're not going to like this, Ryan. My personal opinion. The touchdown against A&M, he's wide open. But then he makes a play after the catch. I don't know if you remember the play. Jukes some guys, like really, really nice highlight play. I never saw a single thing, anything like that from Colston Loveland. Never saw that juke ability.
Yeah.
That's people get on Colston Loveland for that, the lack of yak. I never saw that from him. I saw that on that play, certainly from Fannin. But I think it's important for Fannin that he played against Penn State and A&M. He had 140 yards and a touchdown against both of them.
Absolutely. And that's the same conversation we have about Ashton Jeanty. He didn't play anyone. Well, he beat the pants off of Oregon, so he played them. And I think you're right, because when you talk about the MAC, the competition isn't what it is in the SEC or the Big Ten or whatever, except he went against both those teams from those conferences and took over the game. And a lot of the Bowling Green offense was just put the ball in Harold's hands and let him do the rest. But to your point, he can make plays down the field. He can make contested catches in the middle of the hashes on those intermediate routes. The funny thing for me is that he runs, like his little quirky way in which he runs is like he almost doesn't have knees, but he's still fast and he's still out running guys and he's still making plays. And again, another guy who had a great Senior Bowl week. And I would take him in the 3rd round all day long and just find ways to use him as a slot, out of the slot.
All right, I'm sorry. We went pretty long here, so let's just wrap it up. Your thoughts on the offensive linemen in this draft?
So last year, I'll ask you a pop quiz, Adam. How many offensive linemen went in the 1st round last year?
Who was the first one? Can you tell me that? Like, jog my memory.
I think it was Joe Alt. I'm actually struggling too. I think it was Joe Alt.
I believe it was. And then Latham after that.
6 offensive linemen in the first
9 offensive linemen went in the 1st round last
year.
I
was reading upside down. Sorry. It was a 9. Yeah.
He's dyslexic. You got to forgive him.
Yeah. No, I get it. With the 6th pick, you would have gotten that one right.
Yeah.
I think 4 guys, offensive tackles, and maybe 1 guard, 2 guards. So we could get 4 to 6, I feel like. So I would set the over-under at 5.5, maybe 6.5. So Kelvin Banks Jr. is my OT1, but I think Will Campbell goes first because he's more ready to start. Left tackle for the Patriots. We talked about that to death. I like Armand Mimbu going to the Jets at 7, but I'd like Jamie's idea of taking a tight end there. And then Kelvin Banks could go at 9 to the Saints, for example, or maybe he slips a little bit further. And then Josh Simmons is the San Diego State transfer, got hurt in that Oregon game for Ohio State and missed the second half of the season, but he looks the part. He might be the best athlete of the bunch. And then Tyler Booker, the guard out of Alabama, one of my favorite players, any position. He ran a 4.35. I don't care. People keep talking about that. It doesn't matter. And then Gray Zabel, the North Dakota State left tackle, is going to kick inside at the next level. guard and or center, and he has a chance to be a first rounder as well.
It's going to come up on Thursday when Will Campbell gets selected, maybe as early as 4th. Short arms. Is he really going to play tackle, or are they going to have to move him to guard? What are your thoughts?
As Will Campbell said when he's asked about this, he said, I started as a freshman for LSU in the SEC, and no one cared about my arm length until literally 2 weeks ago or whenever they found out his arm length. If you watch him play, you're like, oh, my God, this kid is great, and he's great against some of the best players in the country. Talked to Walter Nolan at the Senior Bowl, and he said, yeah, the toughest kid I've faced throughout my career, this is going back to their high school days, is Will Campbell, because they were both 5 stars at the same camps and all that other stuff. So Walter Nolan is going to be a first-round pick, and he is very disruptive. And Will Campbell more than held his own against Walter Nolan. I'm not worried about Will Campbell as a tackle. You put him out there and you see what happens. I mean, worst case, you move him inside the guard, but why wouldn't you try him at tackle?
Okay, I'm trying to look for some of the Adam Azer's Google searches. Adam Azer weird sandwich. Adam Azer terrible movie takes. Adam Azer Star Trek shirt. Adam Azer 3-line gate. Yep, these would all be.
Ryan, are you a Star Trek guy?
No, I'm a Star Wars guy.
Star Wars guy.
What, Jamie and or Dave? What are some of Adam's worst movie takes? I'm curious.
Oh God.
This is a bad take.
We had one last week.
Great movie takes.
What's the romantic movie that he thought was amazing, Jamie?
Oh, Crazy Stupid Love. That movie is awesome.
That's a good one.
But he said it like top 5 movie all time.
Oh,
I did not shut up.
I think you did.
Crazy Stupid
Ryan,
Love.
have you seen The Sopranos?
Yeah. Oh, here comes Thomas. Thomas has a word.
It was the one with Patrick Swayze.
Oh, Dirty Dancing. That's
Oh,
right.
Oh, Dirty Dancing is a top 5 movie.
I did not say top 5
No,
movies.
he didn't say top 5 movie. He said when Dirty Dancing's on, he watches it now because he didn't see it when he first saw it. Right? Correct. Is that what he said?
Yeah, it's a great. No, Dirty Dancing is a really good movie.
You've seen it more than 10 times.
You've seen it more than 10 times?
No, it's always on. So I put it on in the background. I don't see, like, I wouldn't go, hey, let's go watch a movie. Let's watch Dirty Dancing. But it's a good movie to put on. It's like a guilty pleasure.
Do you own it?
No, I don't own it.
Okay.
Bad guy, Riri,
Riri.
whatever, said that you think Tom Cruise isn't an action star. That's a terrible one.
Yeah,
Wait, Tom Cruise is not an action star?
that's what Adam thinks.
Because he doesn't fight enough in movies.
Oh, that is a terrible take. What
Yeah,
else does he do?
That's not a great one. He's a Jerry Maguire. He's a drama guy. He's in Cocktail.
I'm pretty sure Jerry Maguire came out in 96, and Cocktail may have been 89.
So much drama in Mission Impossible.
You know what movie I watched? My parents.
Which one, Dave? The 10 of them?
I watched The Running Man with my mom this past week. It was
The original Running Man?
Yeah.
Not
She
a bad movie.
That's a great movie to watch with your mom.
I know. Arnold's like, he had the splits, and she was like, oh my God. And then she's like, that's it. I'm done with this movie.
Hey, there's a great NFL player in that movie.
Oh, Jim Brown. Yeah.
Right?
Oh, look at that call.
Mm-hmm. All right, fellas. Ryan, thank you very much.
Actually, too. Jesse Ventura, I believe, played in the NFL, right? Or college?
I don't
Yeah.
think Jesse did in the
He might-
NFL.
he
I
might-
got to
he might-
Google that.
Yeah, that's Adam Azer, Jesse Ventura. See what that turns. Thanks for having me, guys. I'm glad I was the last minute addition. I'm glad that Adam realized that I do work with him. I've been in the company since 2011, but yeah.
Thanks for filling in. Listen, enjoy your 6-month vacation that starts on Monday, dude.
Oh, I will. I
Yeah.
absolutely will. Me and Brees Hall are going on vacation together, so I'll send you guys some pictures.
Have a great day, everybody. Remember to do that NFL draft contest. Again, the URL is tinyurl.com/FFT2025 draft. For Ryan Wilson, Jamie Eisenberg, Dave Richard, and Thomas Schaefer, I'm Adam Azer. We will talk to you on Wednesday on Fantasy Football Today.